Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 24th, 2022. This is John J. Rupert from Inside the Artist, and we happen to stop by Emiliano Martin's house because we understand he's working on a new book. Emiliano, what's this new book about?
Indeed, I'm working on a new book. The book I'm working on is going to take me some time because I'm taking it easy and I am selecting poems I have written over the years. Some of the poems may have appeared in the book in the last 5, 10, 15 years. But I decided to do a translation in Spanish because the poem works, I think, in the English language. And in some of the poetry readings I have attended, somebody have asked me, could you do that poem in Spanish? And at that time, I didn't have a translation in my mind. And even though I can do an alternate translation on the spot, that's not the way to do it. I have to work it out, find the proper word, the structure of the poem. Of course, keeping the structure, the original structure of the poem. So what I decided is I have so many poems that I have written over the years. I probably have more than 3,000. So I'm going to make a selection of what I think is translatable and put it in Spanish. And that is what I'm doing right now, working on it and putting the book together. Probably next year will be in the street. And
Do you have a working title?
the working title for now is Selected Bilingual Poems, from English to Spanish or vice versa. Titles is something that may change because it depends on the orientation of the moon. My mind can change, but basically right now I'm heading into that direction and calling the book Selected Poems, bilingual poems, I mean.
Now, was the layout going to be similar to previous bilingual books? English on one, Spanish on the other page?
Absolutely. In one page will be the English in the English form, the poem in the English form, and in the other page will be the same poem in the Spanish form. There will be translations or adaptations depending on the subject and the wording, because sometimes pure translations are very difficult to acquire, to conceive. It is done, it can be done, no question about it. But in poetry, there are some, not violations, but some detours we have to take. You know what they say, every translator is a little bit of a traitor. So I'm working on it.
Are you going to include any of your original artwork on this book?
Probably, yeah, maybe a couple of pictures and just to add something different from the poetry. But something that has to do with poetry, of course.
And I know you just released a Spanish book, correct?
Indeed, about 3 weeks ago, a Spanish book on thoughts in the form of haiku was put out, but it's all in Spanish, and it's over 1,000 poems. And it's something I'm very proud of, something that it took me also 22, 23 years of my life in order to complete. And I got to the point of my life where I said, well, how many more I can write? I have passed the barrier of 1,000. So, yeah, I decided to close that chapter and move into something else. And that something else is the selected bilingual poems.
And the Spanish book, that's available now on the website?
The Spanish book is available in the website. Lulu.com can provide the service of delivery to your house, of course, by paying the proper postage and blah, blah, blah. But the book is available in the internet. Pretty soon will be in Amazon. Waiting for them to confirm that the book is available in Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other outlets in the internet, but the publisher Lulu.com is for now the agency able to deliver the book to your own home.
And somebody can simply just Google your name, Emiliano Martin, and see all the other books you have out there?
Absolutely. Google my name, Emiliano Martin, in the internet, and most of my books will appear.
How many books would you say you've published so far over the years?
Oh dear. Probably 18, 17 titles, maybe more, I don't know, because I have written so much. And other titles I have not even published yet, because I have manuscripts from when I was younger that I haven't even touched, put them aside because I don't even know what I did. But yeah, I've written a lot.
Have you ever written any short stories?
Not short stories. I've written in prose a couple of books. One of them is the story of Spaniards in the city of Philadelphia.
Amazing book.
That was prose. I wrote another story of my military service way back in the old days, in the old country. That came out very nice. Actually, it's a very popular book.
Yeah, it's well received.
Some of my friends from the army days, a lot of them bought the book, and it's become a very popular book. Actually, I found out that one of my books have been bought in Australia.
Wow.
Actually, 2 people. So to me, it was kind of a big news, like, wow, 2 people have bought my book in Australia? I don't know anybody there, but I'm happy to know that somebody bought the book.
Do you have any other books that you're thinking about that writing down the line?
I'm always thinking of ideas of writing, but I have so much in my mind that I cannot, at least for now, I cannot put my thoughts together. I have to take one at a time, one day at a time, and decide what I'm going to do. But in order to answer your question, I would like to write the story of my family. That is something that has been in the back of my mind. But I'm always not caught by surprise, but always pushed by the idea of writing something else. Some events occurring in life, society. There is always something going on that prevent me from moving ahead in the direction I have chosen.
Speaking of society, I know you're a regular contributor to the local newspaper around here in reference to the ongoing events that's happening to our world, so I thank you for that.
Well, yeah, I tried. I write a lot of letters to the editor because I am always compelled to tell people how I feel about the latest news, the latest event, whatever happened around us, that I agree or disagree. And there is so much going on. There is always a thought in mind to send to the paper, and yeah, it's like a hobby.
Do you have any examples of your upcoming poetry book you'd like to read to us?
Yeah, I did mention that I'm working on this book for the selected bilingual poems. One of the poems, I will read for you.
Sure.
It is in the form of sketch, so the poem is not even concrete today. I may change something tomorrow. But for now, the title is Very Weird. Is the title of the poem. And it's, well, I'd rather read it. Without having been, I was. Without having gone, I arrived. And I entered without going in. I saw it just without looking. I heard everything. Yet, when I was leaving, I remained inside and outside of my being, like if I did not exist. And of course I will put that in Spanish and have one page in English, have one page in Spanish. I think the title of the poem is very appropriate in this case, Very Weird.
Now, I know you and I have spoken before in reference to the translation. Once again, is it easier English to Spanish or Spanish to English to translate?
It depends on the subject and depends on the format of the poem, because translations, like I said earlier, yes, it can be done, no question about it. There is always one word for the other language. The meaning, the structure, the grammar, the composition of the poem
presentation.
changes. Well, yeah, it changes. But there is always a way to move around and touch the words so that you say the same thing but in a different way. And that happens very often in translations of poetry. Translations are difficult, period, on any language. In poetry it's even worse because, and I don't even have to explain, if you have a rhyming poem, the rhyme does not come in the translation. It's lost, it's a different word. But in my case, I try to maintain the meaning and the message without deviating from it at all. What I say in one language, I say in the other language.
What do you think about the future of poetry as far as the young poets coming up? Because I know a lot of times you're asked to read poems for contests. So what do you think we're going to look like 10, 20 years from now of these young poets growing up?
Probably they will stay in the same course as we are today. What I mean is, very little has changed in poetry in the last 100 years. Maybe in the last 70 years. That free style, that free verse works for everybody, and it's easier to write free verse because most people don't know what rhyme is all about. They think of rhyme as an antique, which is okay. There are a lot of things that can be said without any rhyme, any traditional structure. So, what poetry is going to look like in the next generation? I would say, based on what I have observed lately, it's going to be the same. Because there is nobody thinking of new forms. There is no... I attend a lot of poetry readings and I notice that everybody is just the same. Nobody has a style anymore.
So nobody stands out?
Very few people. Very few people. In the old days, there was a style of poet A versus poet B, and you could tell that this is this and this is that. Now, everybody tells you the same thing with a different flavor, but basically that free style, that free rhyme, that free has evolved into a prose masqueraded in verse. People think they are poets when all they are doing is reading prose.
Do you know why that is?
Well, it's easier to write free verse than to write a traditional poem. Not everybody can write a sonnet. It takes knowledge, it takes ability, it takes a poet to write a sonnet. But anybody can write anything in prose, break the lines in 3, 4, 5 verses, and claim it as a poem. I know these words are not popular among poets because people are going to look at me like, what is he talking about? Well, that's the way it is. People abuse the prose available to them to make it look like a poem. And nobody's complaining, everybody's happy. But the product is that every poet A versus poet B versus poet C, they look alike. It's the same thing. It's no style, it's no form. Very few people have their own way to write or convey verse.
So you would think it's a lot harder to write a structured poem like a haiku or villanelle or something like that?
Of course, you have to think. And people don't have the time to think. And some people don't know how to think. I'm not saying that people who write rhyming verse are better than people who... No, because Walt Whitman demonstrated that you can write in free verse. Come on, Walt Whitman can write it. But not everybody is Walt Whitman. Not everybody is Walt Whitman. And that is what we don't get. Now, there are beautiful poems that are beautiful poetry that is free verse. And it works beautiful because the message, the meaning is there. But in general, it's been abused completely.
Do you think it's not being taught anymore in schools, in English classes?
Oh yeah, they do. They do. I blame the teachers for that, because very few teachers are going to explain how Shakespeare works in poetry. They know he's a genius, they know that, so move on to something else.
Because I remember when I went to school, when I had an English class, each week, we worked on poetry, and each week we would have to write a different structured poem. So we learned about haiku
Sure.
and stuff like that.
Sure.
Which was fun, because like you said, it wasn't the same thing just put together every day.
It is.
And you had to think.
It's fashionable. Robert Frost, who was an American poet and still is one of the best this country has ever produced. David Frost said, not me, David Frost said, and probably 50 years ago, in his words, free verse poetry is like playing tennis without a net. You can do anything you want.
Yeah.
There is no net to get the ball over.
You're the hit, yeah.
No, you hit the ball and everything is. But that's the way it is. And a lot of people will disagree with me, I know that. They say, well, what are you talking about? And they may be right. What am I talking about? What do I know? It's a free world, so it's a free poetry.
Mr. Martin, once again, we want to thank you for your time and as well as your wonderful insight. And we look forward to your new book. And again, what is your Spanish book that was just released? Do you have it?
I have a copy of my latest Apuntes de España en Verso, which is notes of Spain in verse. That's also a book I have published in the Spanish language, as well as my Pensamientos en forma de haiku, which is thoughts in the form of haiku. These two books have appeared within 3 months of one another. It's, as you can see, I'm crazy.
Busy. And we can just simply Google Emiliano Martin, and then your book should come up, and then they can purchase it.
Absolutely.
Again, Mr. Martin, thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, John.